Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is another edition of the Question Guy podcast. And I am here with Sarah Panus, and we have the very reason this podcast, these conversations exist, is because we're going to talk about limiting beliefs and how they really impact your life. Sarah, I know that this was something of a passion project of yours. This is something of passion that you engage people with. And I am so ready to have this conversation. But before we go on, we need to define a couple of things. What are limiting beliefs? Who are you? And why is this conversation so important? So let's start with you first, Sarah. Who are you?
Who am I? Very philosophical question. No. So Sarah Panus, I'm a brand storytelling strategist, is how I explain like the work that I do. I'm not going to be talking about brand storytelling strategy with you guys today and with you, Keith, but I've been working in this industry for 20 years, largely on the corporate side. I've had some agency work there, working for billion-dollar brands. I've done everything from running social teams and influencer teams and content marketing, et cetera. And so now I run my own business called Kindred Speak, where it's a consultancy where I help corporations, I help individuals, small business owners as well, more confidently navigate the world of brand storytelling, like how to humanize your brand, how to have more heart in what we do so that we produce better work, we like the work that we're doing, and then we also are up leveling our own personal skills. So I think today's conversation is definitely going to be in that vein of enhancing our own personal skills in a different way, because it's something that I've learned through trial and error, to just stop my own limiting beliefs. And it's helped me make better decisions in my career. And so I'm really excited to talk about this. And so I do that. I'm also the podcast host of Marketing with Empathy. And yeah, I have some online courses where I help teach people how to DIY it themselves if they don't want to book me as a freelancer to kind of do the work for them. So that's me. I live in Minnesota. I'm a mom of two, and I'm really excited for this chat.
Well, I had to do some background work just before, we had this conversation just to really get a grasp of what limiting beliefs really are. And so, as a coach or as a therapist or a counselor, I think professionals deal with people with limiting beliefs all the time because there are so many things that hinder us from growing and maturing and just being the person that I think we really truly want to be.
Mhm.
And just for a backstory on my part is that, I grew up low income. My mom was divorced, and up in Philadelphia, it was paycheck to paycheck, and I didn't understand that growing up.
Sure.
But I also knew that growing up, I had asthma, not the best looking, not the most popular, not the most
Mhm.
athletic. So I had a lot of things working against me, psychologically and emotionally. And so growing up, I kind of put myself in this bubble, that really limited how I perceived the world, right? Now, as a man who's half a century old, I've kind of grown out of that and adopted some thinking strategies that really helped me break through those things.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what, those limiting beliefs. How do we define, how should we define what a limiting belief is?
Yeah. And, I'll preface by saying I'm not like an expert in this field, but I'll talk about what I've experienced for my own limiting
Oh yeah,
beliefs and what I
sure.
hear with my clients and companies and folks that I work with through the last few years. So, like a limiting belief, like how I define it, is it literally is something that limits you from reaching your full potential. It's something that you like get in your own head on. Maybe you feel it in your head and your heart, but
Hmm.
it's something that just it prevents you from living to your fullest potential. So that's how I would describe it. So for me, and some of the things that I went through, that I'll share, like in the stories, I mean, I have had limiting beliefs and I still struggle with them. I think you don't always get over everything by any means. It's just human nature to kind of like second guess ourselves,
Right.
but sometimes we do it too much. And so, like for me, I've had fears of like, oh, I can't do that. I don't think I can. The worry of like, I think that would be too much. I'm gonna say no. I'm not gonna go for it. There's like things like that, and everyone has different limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I don't have enough confidence to do this. I'm not that great of a speaker. I mean, like people can have all these different kinds of limiting beliefs that hold us back. They hold us back from being better in our careers and in our lives, right? And sometimes those beliefs are valid. Like there are some valid things about ourselves where we may know our strengths and our weaknesses, but I think, there's always that saying, like we're always our own worst critic. And I think that's where
We're our
limiting
own
beliefs
worst
come in.
enemy, right?
Yes, our
Yeah.
own worst enemy. Like we amplify like the things when like external people would probably look at us and be like, no, that's not really, I don't really see that about you. I don't think that at all, So it's like that. So that's how I would think about it.
So I did a couple of things this year, and so I'm going to challenge you a little bit, but I do want to kind of talk about how to challenge your own beliefs and how to overcome them. Because when you sent me your intro, it was about if if all you see is door A or door B or door number one or door number two,
Mm-hmm.
that's limiting because you only see two possibilities, two options, and you're saying there's at least always going to be a third door. There's always going to be another option to approach. And so going back to 2022
Mm-hmm.
and going back to 2021, I was in professionally, I wanted to grow. I wanted to expand personally and professionally. I wanted to kind of do some changes. And so some of that was, trailing off of COVID, but a lot of it was just, I know I needed to be better. I needed to be different. I needed to be somebody else. And I did some reflection. And so what I decided to do was reach out to people on my LinkedIn connection. And about, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was probably at 5,000. I've almost doubled that at this point. But it was, I really wanted to have the opportunity to have conversations with people. It was important for me. And then I soon found out that it was important for them as well because they had their limiting beliefs based on everything that they've experienced in life. So whether it was personal, professional, and then COVID, the pandemic, you
Yeah.
know, for, caused them to think a certain way about themselves. But then people started making changes. People want it to be different. People want it to expand, grow, and the words I hear, they become a better version of themselves. So when we talk about having to or looking at door number one and door number two, and how would you help somebody say that's a limiting belief right there? There's at least a third door, and at the very least, a third door, and possibly more options. That's a lot to think
Yeah.
about.
Well, I know
Go ahead.
it is because sometimes, in the moment, you don't always realize that you're limiting yourself,
Right.
right? Like you may not even think that it's a thing if you haven't done some work, like to actually kind of talk through these things and think them through and journal like you did. Journaling is a great exercise to kind of think through. I would say in the moment, and I'm going to walk through some great examples for me that in the moment was other people actually helped me realize that I was limiting myself, that there was another option that I wasn't thinking of. Or maybe in the deep recesses of my mind and heart, I kind of wanted it, but then I was like nervous about even bringing it up. And so, like, through my career and over the last 20 years, I've just learned to realize that, dang, it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes and to say to other people, hey, here, I'm thinking of this or this. I'm at a
Mhm.
point in my career where I'm wondering, should I stay? Should I go? Should I do X or Y? And they can also, people who that you trust and people that maybe who know you well could help bring up other solutions too. So like I have a few different great examples. Can I share those right now? Is that a
Please. Yeah,
good,
this is
because I
what
think
it's
it
all
kind of
about.
paints to life like how I've realized this, and through other people pointing it out to me is how I've gotten now to my current point where I feel more confident just stopping and asking myself, well, is there a third choice that I'm not even thinking of? And asking other people I trust, like, hey, I'm thinking of this and this. Like, is there another thing I'm thinking of? So, like, we'll go way back. Like, so I have a few different examples of this. I was
Go for
running
it.
a 7-person social team for $1 billion retailer, and I was responsible for like a $10 million budget. And I was really had accomplished what I wanted to do, like, and what I had worked so hard to achieve. Like that was like the job, and I was really excited about it. But after doing that job for like 9 years, a little over 9 years, I was super burnt out. I really, really was. And I wasn't as present as I wanted to be for my family and my young kids and my husband. And that was a problem because for me, family's first. And I was like, this isn't going to be sustainable for me long term. I wanted at that moment, I was like, I would really just love it if I could work from home, because nobody was working from home back then.
Mhm.
So that I could be there when my son got home from school. Like he was starting kindergarten at that time. Um, and I just wanted to be there. My dream had changed, and that's okay, right? For everyone, like your dreams will change. You'll accomplish things, or maybe you won't, and things will evolve. But like I had gotten there, I was living that dream, and I was burnt out from it and ready to change. So my decision at that time, just to simplify it, was, well, should I stay or should I go? Right? Do I
Mm.
stay in this job or do I leave and find a different job? And it's stressful. Anytime you're thinking of moving jobs, there's a lot of people moving jobs right now, right? Voluntarily and involuntarily, unfortunately. There's a lot of layoffs and things happening as well. And so what I decided at that moment was I had a really vulnerable conversation with my boss, my then boss. And in that conversation of should I stay or should I go, I was letting her know I was burnt out, but I really liked the company and I enjoyed like the brand as a whole. We were able to identify a third choice, which was being able to step into a whole new role for the company and to use my skill set to help drive content strategy while being able to work from home, because we wanted to test that out for the company. And then that allowed me to be able to be home when my son came home from school, which is like what I really wanted. And I could be more mindful because I wasn't answering on social all the time for all the teams and everyone in a billion-dollar company that's asking questions about it all the time. And what was really cool about that was I got to step into this new role, but then also another person from my team at the time was able to fill my previous role. She was able to step into what I was doing and advance her career in the process. So it was just a total win-win, right? We were all elevating ourselves. And so for me, it didn't become, should I stay, should I go? It became like, well, let's create this whole new thing. And that doesn't always happen, but it never would have happened if I hadn't gone into that discussion, with
Right,
my
right.
boss. And I was so nervous. I remember being so nervous because I was like, she might just say, well, tough, you're fired, or you got to go find another job. And I was like, well, I was already thinking of trying to, should I look for a new job anyway? So to me, there was really no huge downside to having this conversation. I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to have to look for a new job. And I was already doing that at the point. And then I had like fast forward then. So 3 years later, I'm doing this new job that we had created,
Mhm.
and I'm rocking it. Like it's awesome. I'm doing remote content strategy. We're proving that remote work works for others in the organization, which was cool because then they were allowing more people to start dabbling in remote work, which nobody was doing at the time.
Wow.
And I really loved that. But then at that point, I'd been with the same company for over a decade, which is a really long time. And my creative juices were kind of like screaming at me to be like, I want to help other brands and collaborate with other people. And I don't want to, just pigeonhole myself in this one company. But I really liked my job, Keith. Like I really, really liked my job, and I liked what I did. And so, but I just wanted to diversify a bit. So
Right.
then I was faced again with this decision, and I'd put it into like A or B. Should I quit? Or at that time I was thinking, should I quit or should I start my own consulting business? Or stay, since I like what I do. And so it was like, those were my thoughts. And I'm like, what do I do? And I was working with a friend of mine who was my health coach at the time. And we were going through some things and discussing, and I was walking her through this. And that's why I was like, gosh, I don't know. Like, should I just stay? Or should I want to work with other brands? Maybe I should go into consulting. I was having this whole thing. And she so wisely said to me, she said, well, why couldn't you just do both? And my immediate reaction, this was my limiting belief, my immediate reaction was, oh, they would never be okay with that. In my mind, I just thought that wasn't even a possibility. I was limiting, like, I can't even ask for that because that's like the most ridiculous thing and no one's going to say yes. Like, it's so silly saying it out
To
loud now.
like work for us, but work for somebody else at the same time.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what employer is going to say yes to that? Like that's just, and they would never go for that. And she said, well, how do you know? Have you asked them? And then I looked at her with her smart little smile and I said, No, I haven't asked anyone. This is just something I'm making up in my mind. I'm making up this answer for them. And she's right, right? Like, so why couldn't I do both? So then it all of a sudden opened up this new path in my brain. And I ended up having a conversation with my then boss and HR. And yeah, they couldn't. Everyone was like, yeah, you can totally have a side hustle, Sarah. As long as it doesn't compete with what we're doing, as long as you don't do it on company time, by all means, right? Like they can't prevent me from wanting to do a side hustle. So all of a sudden I went from, oh, they would never go for that, which was really me being like, I don't think I could even ask for that, to yeah, it's okay. Right. And so that's when I started my current consulting business as a side hustle at the end of 2019 is where we're at now. And so I've started my consulting company, which is called Kindred Speak. And I'm dabbling in the consulting world, joining this ever growing side hustle world, really. And then COVID hits. Right. Boom, boom, boom. So this is end of 2019. I have this side hustle created, which really was a blessing because I worked for this large $1 billion retailer. COVID happens. Retailers were hit really hard, as we all remember. All their stores had to close for their products, and so sales were down, right? And all this uncertainty, and so companies are kind of buttoning down and trying to figure out what to do. So what they did was they ended up furloughing 40% of the entire company. It's a lot
Wow.
of people, and
Yeah.
that was including me. So for those of you who haven't like experienced furlough, because I hadn't, I had to like Google like what is furlough. I just didn't even understand what it was. Basically, what it means is you can't work anymore and but you're not fired. And so you're kind of like on hold. And for while you're holding, you're not paid for it. So it's kind of like you have the job, but you're not getting paid anything and you can't do it. So you're just kind of just waiting. Okay. So I ended up being furloughed for 3 months for 90 days. And during that time, like right away, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go all in on my side hustle, right? I'm just going to bust my butt, right? I have a family, we have like a mortgage, we have all the things. And so that was nerve-wracking. And so it was beautiful because I already had everything created for my side hustle. I was already working from home. So it helped. It ended up being a really nice transition. So I was just busting my butt during those 90 days, just going all in and really loving like conversations I was having with different businesses and people and potential clients and kind of just growing it more. So then what happened, right? So then I was like, I know the 90 days were coming up to an end. I was going to have this conversation with my then boss about I was like, it's going to probably go one of two ways, right? They're going to invite me to come back or I'm fired. And in my mind, this is where I'd already started realizing the power of this third choice. In my mind, I was like, maybe it doesn't have to just be I'm fired or I come back, because what I had realized by going full time into this side hustle was I really liked it. And I really loved the flexibility it was giving me for my family, as all the COVID craziness was happening. And I just wanted that long term. I wanted that flexibility long term. So I made a decision in my mind and I said, I don't want to go back full time. And I'm going to let them know that. Which was scary because then I was like, they might just say, okay, well, you're cut, right? Like who knew? COVID was such a crazy time. So again, had a very vulnerable and open conversation with my boss about what I was feeling and kind of the options that I was thinking of. And because it was a conversation of going back full time or running my own business full time. And so what happened? So basically, what happened was I end up losing my job. But the beauty of it was that I actually gained my first consulting client because
Your
I
job?
lost a job. Yeah. So my previous employer, they were like, part-time wasn't going to work. But they're like, we'll hire you as a consultant. So I ended up losing my job, but then I gained my first consulting client with that same $1 billion retailer. And they ended up working with me in a large capacity for the next 2 years. So it was so amazing, right? It's just so cool when you don't limit yourself to think like, hey, it's just A or B, like what could this third option be? For me, it didn't matter. So like the takeaway from all those examples, Keith, and why I talk about like this phrase, I just think there's power in the third choice, is that I had always, in a lot of scenarios, narrowed myself down to thinking it was A or B, it was black or white, after kind of weighing all the pros and cons and things like that. only to realize in those examples that there was always something else that could be a blend that could be better, that I hadn't initially been thinking about or was too scared to ask. And my own limiting beliefs, when I just kind of reflected back on it in the beginning, it was because I doubted, if I could do it. I wasn't sure if the employee would go for it. Fear about it not working out. Like, those are all limiting things that were stressing me out and, could have prevented me from ever stepping in to even have those discussions in the first place, to realize that there could be other options for me. So that's kind of that I want to share that, because there's so many scenarios we all go through in our life. And I think it is really important to think and just ask yourself, like, is there a third choice that I'm not thinking of? Is there something, like, what am I thinking right now about me in this? Because that could be a question you ask yourself to kind of identify if you maybe are limiting.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is
like,
good. And
yeah.
that's really good. And I know that you were conscious of time for today's conversation. And so I just want to make sure you're aware that the amount of energy and excitement and power you bring to this conversation definitely means we got to do it again. However, before we end this conversation, only because of time, how can people reach out to you? Where are you in the world and where are you on the internet?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Keith. So yes, I am. Everyone can find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can look for Sarah Panus on LinkedIn. If you are interested in the brand storytelling, content marketing space, definitely invite you to follow my Marketing with Empathy podcast. And you can check out my website at kindredspeak.com.
Sarah, thank you so much for this conversation. Of course, this has been another edition of the Question Guy podcast. Thank you for joining us. You take care. Bye bye.